Do I really have to do this every single day? Yes. Do it every single day. The more consistent you are at doing it, the faster you'll get better. Think about your own OCD for a second. Like picture what you do on a regular day when you start having OCD thoughts. I don't know if you notice this, but your OCD thoughts follow the same pattern every time. You get an OCD related thought or image, you start to get scared or panic or get that urgency feeling. You do something that makes you feel better, your compulsion, and then you feel better for a while. But that calm feeling you get after you do your compulsion, it doesn't last, does it? And eventually you get another thought related to your OCD theme, and the whole thing starts again. That whole pattern you're doing, that's the OCD cycle. That's what you're trying to stop doing. In this video, I'm going to talk about how you can recover from OCD by using the cognitive disengagement method. I have another video where I talk about each step in more detail, but in this video, I'm going to focus on how you can use the cognitive disengagement method each time you have an OCD thought on a regular day, what that would look like by using the example, and how your symptoms would get better over time while you're doing these steps. Everybody who has OCD has a theme that the OCD thoughts seem to focus on. There's a bunch of different kinds, like real event OCD, harm OCD, and a lot of other ones. Each one has different subgroups and unique parts for each person. So just because you're in the same theme doesn't mean you're going to be experiencing the same type of OCD as somebody else. It gets a lot more complex. Your theme can change too. It did for me a bunch of times before I got better, but it's always centered around something that you really care about. What I mean is, no one's going to develop relationship OCD if they've never been in a relationship before, or religious OCD if they're not religious. Your OCD theme is always something that's important to you. The OCD cycle I was talking about earlier happens in the same way no matter what your OCD theme is. Even with the same OCD theme, the cycle isn't going to be the exact same each time. It's going to change depending on how you've ruminated about it in the past. Those initial thoughts you get when you're starting an OCD cycle that cause you to get panicked or having that urgency feeling are going to change over time, depending on how much you've thought about this topic. People who don't have OCD think OCD is just you saying the same thing in your head over and over and over again, and you can't stop for some reason. Like, stab your husband or stab your wife. But it's not actually like that. It's the same theme, like, will I hurt my spouse? But you're asking yourself different questions or trying to solve some kind of problem each time you're doing an OCD cycle. Here's an example with real event OCD that I've noticed coming up recently. Meet Kevin. Kevin has real event OCD. This is what one of his OCD cycles would look like. Wow, that post sounds so racist. Who would write something like that? Wait, what if I posted something like that online when I was a kid and just forgot about it? Kevin starts to get afraid. His heart is beating fast in his chest at that thought, and he's racking his brain trying to remember if that actually happened or not. After thinking for a while, Kevin comes up with a solution. He'll just spend the entire afternoon looking at every post he's ever made, just to be sure. After a few hours, Kevin didn't find anything. He feels better and goes to sleep. In the morning, Kevin gets a new thought. What if I posted it on a social media I don't use anymore? Kevin's heart starts racing again. He frantically starts checking all the social media accounts he stopped using a while ago. He thinks he's checked all of them, but he doesn't remember for sure. Checking the ones he did remember did make him feel a bit better, but he's still uneasy about the ones he can't remember, even if they don't exist. Kevin feels okay for a while, but then he gets a new thought. What if I posted it and then deleted it because I thought it sounded really bad? Kevin feels like he's about to have a panic attack. He starts to message people he hasn't talked to for a while, asking them if they remember him posting anything weird on social media. Most of them get back to him and say no, they don't remember him saying anything weird or unusual, but some of them don't answer at all, probably because he hasn't talked to them for such a long time, which makes Kevin even more anxious and think about even more things that could happen. What if I posted it on a different account that I don't have anymore? What if somebody saved what I wrote and is going to repost it? What if my friends and family see it? What if my work sees it? Kevin starts to spiral. He starts having OCD cycles more frequently, and every time he has a new OCD cycle, he feels more anxiety and more panic and that urgency to try to figure it out. This is just an example, but the cycle in this example is the same no matter what OCD theme you have. The cognitive disengagement method is a way to group all those OCD-related thoughts into a category that you make and then decide not to think about it anymore. That's step 0. Then, don't engage with the thoughts when they come into your head. How do you do that? It takes practice. After an OCD thought comes into your head and you start feeling afraid, don't do your compulsion to feel better. Do step 1 instead. Step 1 is to calm down. Then, when you're calm, do step 2, blank mind. Blank mind is basically waiting passively until a new, unrelated thought comes into your head. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the steps, just because I've done that already in the End Your OCD guide that I mentioned earlier, so check that out if you're confused on some of the terms that I'm using here. Let's go back to Kevin as the example. Kevin is now on his 50th OCD cycle. His most recent OCD thought was, what if there was a video of me saying something racist? Kevin is almost sure he didn't say anything like that, or that anyone would be recording it, but him thinking about an old memory triggered this new OCD thought. By the way, this might sound far-fetched, or you might think that Kevin's fears are really stupid, but all OCD fears start to sound crazier and crazier the more OCD cycles you do. That's why when you tell anybody what you're afraid of, or if you're asking for reassurance, they look at you like you're nuts. It's because they don't know the backstory of how many things you thought of until you came up with your most recent OCD thought. So anyway, back to Kevin. Kevin recently learned about the cognitive disengagement method and decided to try it. When the most recent OCD thought came in, he started to panic, but then he tried calming himself down without doing his compulsion. Kevin already did step 0 and decided he wasn't going to engage with any thoughts related to his old social media posts. That was his judgment. He repeated words to himself. I've done this before. I've done this so many times before. I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to try something new. I've done this before. I'm not going to keep doing this. He kept repeating that mantra to himself until he eventually calmed down. When he calmed down, he did step 2, blank mind. Kevin waited for a new thought to come into his head. The first thought that came in was still related to his OCD topic, so as soon as he realized that, he went right back to blank mind. The second thought that came in also was related to his topic, so he again went back to blank mind. He did this a few times, but eventually he started thinking about something else, passively. Kevin did it. Now, every time he thinks about something related to the judgment he came up with in step 0, he just does steps 1 and 2 instead of his compulsions. His OCD thoughts are coming in less frequently and less intensely. Kevin is on his way to stop having OCD, and if any new OCD themes come up in the future, Kevin knows what to do. That's what you need to do as well. Do step 0 and come up with a judgment. Then do steps 1 and 2 every time an OCD thought comes into your head. Don't do it some of the time. Don't say, I was too afraid this time so I couldn't do it. Don't say, it felt so real, there's nothing I could do, I had to do my compulsion, I had to reassure myself. Do it every single time. That OCD cycle that I was talking about is physically in your brain. I'm a neuroscientist, not a psychologist. I can tell you that as you're going through those thoughts every day, you're making physical connections in your brain related to your OCD theme. If you stop doing that cycle, and instead change what you do each time an OCD thought comes into your head, the OCD wired parts of your brain will change. You can rewire those connections, but you have to be consistent and do it every time. Your OCD cycle in your brain will get weaker and start to degrade, and the new cycle you're starting, the cognitive disengagement method, will get stronger and stronger. This method is not like ERP, because ERP tells you to expose yourself to your fear on purpose and just become comfortable with the outcome or habituate to the things you're afraid of. The cognitive disengagement method doesn't tell you that you're ever going to be okay with your OCD thoughts and fears, because they're actually scary and terrible. If you told somebody the things you're afraid of happening, not your actual OCD thoughts, but the outcomes, like your family dying, you killing your family, everybody hating you and ostracizing you, you getting horribly sick and never feeling better, they would all agree with you that those things are terrible and scary. But everybody else is also dealing with those possibilities in their own lives, and they're not spending every day thinking about it like you are, because they don't have OCD. The cognitive disengagement method is telling you to group all those things you're afraid of together and stop thinking about them. The risk for you is not any greater than the risk for somebody else, even if you think it is. You grouping all these OCD thoughts together doesn't mean that you think that they're not scary, but they're not something that you can change. You might want to change them because you can't live with these horrible things happening, but the reality is, you can't. If you could, then all your rumination, all your compulsions, everything you've been doing to calm yourself down during your OCD cycles would have stopped you from thinking about it by now. But it hasn't. You're probably thinking about it more than ever. With this method, you're basically grouping those thoughts together and consciously deciding not to engage with them because they've been causing you harm and ruining your life day to day. I had severe OCD for many years before I did this method, so I can probably picture what most of you are thinking about in your head, because I used to do it too. In the moment, the fear feels so real. I can't stop thinking about it, because it's too important. It's too urgent. It feels like somebody has a gun to my head. How am I supposed to ignore that? The thing is, this isn't the first time somebody has that gun to your head. It's the 100th time, the 1,000th time, or the 10,000th time. You keep getting seduced by that fear, that emotion, and it makes you do irrational things. Your OCD fear might happen in the future. Nobody can reassure you enough to make that fear go away. But you're wasting your time right now, living in misery. Once you realize that what you're doing hasn't been working, you can take the step to try something new. When you come to that conclusion, you can commit to not engaging with anything related to those thoughts ever again. If what I said in this video makes sense to you, check out my free End Your OCD guide. Everything in that video explains how I went from having severe OCD for multiple years to now being completely free from OCD, where it doesn't affect my life at all anymore. If you tried the steps in that guide and you're still struggling, I also made a course with more details about the steps of the cognitive disengagement method, and I'll also be answering any questions you might have while you're taking the material. I put a lot of work in making that course, so you'll definitely be getting your money's worth. If you're still struggling even after doing that, I also offer one-on-one coaching where we can go through your OCD theme together and see where you might be going wrong. You have the power to end your OCD forever. I hope this is the last OCD video you watch.